Welcome to the Casual Historian Podcast. My name is Grant, and this is my co-host, James.
Hello.
This is the podcast where we talk about the things you don't usually get to talk about in your regular history classes. And today, we're going to put on our tinfoil hats because this is conspiracy theories in American history.
Yeah, specifically the American kind, because the others might make more sense.
Conspiracy theories are a grand old tradition in America, like apple pie, baseball, and other less savory activities.
Well, apple pie is sweet, not savory. But, you know, we do have this weird tendency in the United States to overblow our conspiracy theories much more than, you know, other parts of the world. I think there are a lot of cultural reasons for that are peculiar to America, and I'll get to those, but yeah, it's the American conspiracy theory is a unique animal compared to some others, and even weirdly, you know, American perspectives on creating conspiracies for things that happen that don't affect us at all.
So our culture of conspiracies here comes from largely that Americans distrust government. We distrust power. The creation of the United States came from a distrust of power. You know, we overthrew first our local governments and then rebelled against the government that was 3,000 miles away. And so we have kept up with this distrust of government ever since, and this has led to conspiracies. Some of these conspiracies are of those of the government. Many of them are of groups trying to be the government. And they come from the very beginning. Like, during the American Revolution, one of the conspiracies is that the British Crown was trying to gradually erode our English liberties, and that they wanted to take control of America directly, which is, you know, something that we don't like. And so we started a revolution on it.
Well, I mean, I'm certainly willing to make the case that that conspiracies or this weird anti-authoritarian streak can be linked. But, you know, there's also another feature of conspiracy theories, especially in the United States, in which studies have shown that those who tend to hold to conspiracy theories tend to be also considered to be socially isolated. They can be linked with sociopathy, and they're also strongly linked with anti-intellectualism, in that no matter how much proof or evidence you can provide about something, a believer in conspiracy theory will simply just say that you are a tool of the New World Order, lizard, queen masters, etc., etc., etc.
Well, the lizard people is not an American thing. That's a British thing. You got that David Icke.
It's spread here.
It's spread here, but
the internet.
But I think it almost spread here more as a joke than anything else. But
and yet,
yes. But I guess when I talk about this history of American conspiracy theories, I want to talk with an early one that you can actually find in one of James Madison's writings. James Madison at the Constitutional Convention kept a detailed series of notes from the convention. You know, he was one of the secretaries of it, so he wrote everything down. And one of the conspiracy theories comes from a person who would become a future presidential candidate representing South Carolina, Charles Pinckney, who would become governor of the state and then later a Federalist Party candidate for president. When the discussion over the slave trade was happening, he believed there was a conspiracy by the Virginians to abolish the slave trade in order to bring more wealth to Virginia. And his reasoning for it is that, well, if we abolish the slave trade, that'll increase the price of slaves in the domestic market. And who has the most slaves? Virginia. Oh, look at that. And the Virginians are supporting the abolishment of the slave trade. How convenient. And so Charles Pinckney, based on that, pushed for a later end date to the slave trade because of a conspiracy of Virginian delegates.
And this is why America is bad with conspiracy theories, because then we actually allow them to influence decision-making, actual relevant decision-making.
Oh, that's not all. Of course, during the War of 1812, or just leading up to it, there was a conspiracy that British agents were going into New England and buying up wool, buying up a whole bunch in order to make the price of wool go up, and so that there's a smaller supply within the United States itself.
Wow. You know, another big chunk of conspiracy theories are, you know, many of them are often linked to the fact that we also just don't always understand the other. So there are a lot of conspiracy theories. For example, anti-Semitism has been linked to conspiracy theories, especially those involving the New World Order, because The myth of some shadowy cabal of Jews controlling the world's monetary supply has somehow never gone away. We also have anti-Catholic conspiracy theories, many of which I suspect we may have inherited from our English ancestries, given paranoia about Catholicism. And then, of course, the assassinations of various presidents, 9/11. So which one of those do you want to explore next?
Well, let's start with something semi-related to assassinations, in particular with Abraham Lincoln and conspiracy thoughts before the Civil War. And before the Civil War, there was, of course, both in the North and the South had conspiracies about the other. In the South, they feared, the greedy merchant industrialist wants to take away our freedom. And in the North, it was the slavocrat powers want to perpetuate slavery. And in a way, these are both sort of correct, but they're getting really into deep, dark, nefarious corners. Like this is an elaborate conspiracy of people trying to manipulate everything, which is a common trope in conspiracy theories, which makes you realize how unreal they can be, because you can't have that elaborate of a cabal without information leaking out.
And especially where conspiracy theories tend to center on government activity. I always have to express my admiration for them because they obviously have much greater faith than I do in the capacity and the capabilities of the government. Because in conspiracy theories, the government has its stuff together. I mean, it's moving, it is effective, it's efficient, and I'm like, great. I would actually love a government that can function that smoothly.
Yes, it reminds me of an episode of South Park from, probably 10 years ago now, where the whole conspiracy was, the 9/11 conspiracies are a government conspiracy. We need to make people think we're in control of everything, even if we're not.
That might actually be real. I mean, an actual conspiracy, not a parody. It could be real. The other weird thing, and especially lately, there's been this resurgence of elements of conspiracy theories. The Illuminati New World Order conspiracy theory kind of gained a lot more traction, especially after the Maastricht Treaty was pushing Europe toward a political union. But the other big one that's happened, and this one is one that I am utterly baffled by. I know you've done some research on it. Is the one in which the world is a conspiracy theory that the world is actually flat, and that the notion of the world being a sphere or a spheroid is actually a conspiracy. And frequently, a big player in these conspiracy theories is NASA, because NASA actually provides scientific research and data showing that the Earth is in fact not flat.
Yes. Yes, the flat earthers are something of a favorite of mine, because I did research into them, and there were organizations that were taking themselves very seriously until about the 90s. But then a new group, Flat Earth Society, was founded in 2004, and they have a website. You can visit it, and they actually have a podcast on iTunes that you can find, the Flat Earth Society podcast. They had 4 episodes, and the last episode was uploaded like 4 years ago. But, they're a group that can sometimes take themselves very seriously. And all of their evidence, when they have a section of their website dedicated to, okay, here's the scientific evidence for a flat Earth. Half of it is just, like a moon landing conspiracy type stuff where, see, this flag isn't moving the way it would move in hypothetical space.
Right. It's very interesting because, it points to this very strong trend of anti-intellectualism. And how do you think that those might interact in, this cognitive dissonance where the notion of scientific fact or data simply cannot penetrate a wall of such firm conviction and belief in these weird theories?
Well, anti-intellectualism is something also of an American trait, though I would recommend reading Alexis de Tocqueville in that it's not, anti-intellectualism isn't necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. See, the problem with intellectualism, as de Tocqueville points this out, is that the problem with intellectuals is that there's 2 things. They think they have all the information, and they think they should be in charge. And that can be a very dangerous combination, especially if they don't have all the information.
Well, an argument against technocracy, which is what that would be, is not the same thing as being an anti-intellectualist.
Well, depending on exactly how you're defining it, basically, Alexis de Tocqueville portrayed Americans as being anti-intellectual, but he didn't see that as a bad thing. It's like, Americans are going to be the economic engine of the world, he said. And that's, well, largely the case today. But the anti-intellectualism still contributes to conspiracies everywhere in the world. It just so happens anti-intellectualism isn't condemned in the United States like it would be elsewhere.
We do, in some areas, it's almost fetishized. But, now moving back to, the wonderful world of politics.
Yes.
How about some of the bouquet of 9/11 conspiracy theories?
Yes, well, of course, as we all know, jet fuel can't melt steel beams. What happened to Tower 7, even though the answer seems quite obvious when a bunch of debris fell on top of it?
No. That's just what the Illuminati want you to think.
Yes, and at this point, I almost don't even think about the 9/11 conspiracy theories, mostly because they've been so thoroughly demolished by this point that the only people, it's like, you almost feel like the people who are still spouting them out, you're thinking like, are you trolling me? Is this just an elaborate, it's like the whole, are the 9/11 conspiracies a government conspiracy? Well,
I also, used to feel that way myself, and then I realized that sometimes when one strays too far into the shadowy places of the internet, that in fact, no, the trolls are not ironic. They are real believers in these theories. And sometimes it's very interesting to note that some of these theories might be a bit contradictory at times, but oftentimes if you find someone who believes in one conspiracy theory, they have a few others, and they link them together in very creative and interesting ways.
Oh, yes. I am jealous of their creativity. It's like, wow, can you write a novel?
Orwell would have been proud.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And a series of another set of conspiracy theories would be, especially more modern ones, birthers. If you're familiar with the people who once questioned whether or not Barack Obama was legally eligible to be president of the United States due to where he was born. I'll cover that issue in a second, but I like the audience to know that actually wasn't the first time a president's legitimacy to hold the office based on location of birth was brought up in American politics. In the 1880s, we had President Chester A. Arthur, whom many people believed there was a vocal number of people who believed that he was not legally qualified to be president because they believed he was born in Quebec. Like another presidential candidate today, he was believed to have been born in Quebec. Well, except for, this modern presidential candidate, he was born in Quebec. But of course, it has to do with the issue of what makes someone, a natural born citizen, and the fact that the founders were really not clear about that.
Well, because the funny thing about that, as a side note in a legal matter, if we really do look at the way we strictly tend to interpret the natural born citizen clause, it actually would, strictly speaking, mean that none of the founding fathers could have been president.
Well, actually, within the qualifications, there actually is something allowing them. It's, all people who are all natural born citizens are those who were citizens of the United States at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. That's what allowed people like Alexander Hamilton to become president, but he never did.
Yes. Well, I mean, this the way in which we tend to view the matter today. We tend to view it, strictly speaking, as you must be born to American parents on American soil, and anything short of that is a disqualifier. But we don't actually people don't actually realize that the statute is much more flexible than that.
Yes, it's has to do with more so today, much more today. It has to do with who your parents are. Like usually, if at least one of your parents is a U.S. citizen, and wherever you're born, you're considered a natural-born U.S. citizen.
Yeah, it's also interesting to note that there's almost this assumption, as I've heard in some rhetoric from the Trump campaign regarding Ted Cruz, the notion that having held citizenship in any other country disqualifies you, which is also not something that is the case. Dual citizenship is, well, I don't believe, I'm not sure that it's ever been, we've had a president who's held dual citizenship while holding office, but it's not anything that would disqualify a person from holding office.
Yeah, I don't know if we have had one, because there have been some funny candidates who actually could have been president, like Winston Churchill probably could have legally run for office had he... There's one qualification that he would have never met, which is you have to have lived in the United States for at least 14 years. That's one of the qualifications people don't tend to think about, because most of the people who end up running for president have spent their entire lives here. You know, we don't live abroad very often. That's not that's not something Americans tend to do. Mostly because we have just a big-ass country, and especially today, when travel abroad has just become a lot more difficult due to 9/11 and subsequent terrorism, it's just become a lot more of a hassle. So we don't do that anymore. But, you know, yeah, so, and this brings me to another birther-related conspiracy with Obama. It's that, yes, there's a theory that he was born outside the United States, you know, most frequently. Oh, he was born in Kenya. It's like, well, for one, even if he was born in Kenya, he would still be a natural-born U.S. citizen because his mother was a citizen. Don't know anything about his father, but from what I know about Barack Obama Sr., he was kind of a douche.
Well, you know, it's just, you know, the other thing, too, is that the conspiracy theory does not merely stop to question, does the person meet the qualification? Then it becomes not merely, for example, in the case of Obama, it wasn't really, oh, is he actually qualified because he may have been born in Kenya to a possible non-citizen parent. No, now it becomes, it's some weird conspiracy to infiltrate the U.S. government on the part of radical Islamic forces, and it's actually rather shocking because you look at these conspiracy theories, and I think that Obama has been probably the target of more conspiracy theories, the negative target of conspiracy theories, probably more than any post-war president, although Kennedy had his share, and so did Reagan.
And, well, I'd say, I think modern presidents are far more likely to have conspiracy theories thrown at them, because George W. Bush had a lot thrown at him, especially from the very beginning, with him not winning the popular vote, and that spurred on a large number of conspiracy theories.
Yeah, that is actually, you know, especially in the election of 2000, sometimes conspiracy theories reflect this weird thing in the human mind where we attempt to rationalize what appears to be irrational to us. And the thing is that, and it links to the anti-intellectualism, because the election of 2000 being decided as it was, there is a rational explanation for it. It might not be one that I like or agree with, but there is one. There's, you know, the constitutional existence of the Electoral College with the winner-take-all provision in the state of Florida for its states. You have the Supreme Court decision, which, you know, shut the door on it and awarded the victory as it did. There's no reason to read a conspiracy theory into that because it makes perfect sense. Now, people who don't know how the government works, or sometimes doesn't work, tend to resort to these weird, anomalous concepts.
Bush, from the very beginning, was the target of many. And, of course, first you had Florida, then 9 months into his presidency, oh, look, planes crash into towers, then you get your 9/11 truthers. And, of course, there were two different classes of 9/11 truthers, as I learned from a surprisingly once reliable source, the History Channel. And they divided the 9/11 truthers into two groups, the MIHOPs, M-I-H-O-P, and the LIHOPs, L-I-H-O-P. The MIHOPs were those who believed the government made 9/11 happen, you know, M-I-H-O-P, made it happen on purpose. And the LIHOPs being, let it happen on purpose. One of them is being, you know, one of them is, oh, Dick Cheney is in the Twin Towers setting up fuses himself. Yeah. And then you have the LIHOP saying, yeah, they knew it was going to happen and they just let it happen.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, and I think the weirdest things that, you know, as the modern age, conspiracy theories are oddly enough much easier to debunk, you know, to the rational person, because there's just the largest amount of information available to really make the cases that need to be made. But ironically, one of the things that helps to support this, the internet, also sometimes helps the spread of these theories, because isolated or disaffected people tend to find a place on the internet where they just find ways in which these conspiracy theories resonate with them, and they embrace them. And I think that it's a weirdly growing phenomena in some ways, because you look at some of the rhetoric that's being spouted from some in presidential campaigns, not candidates themselves per se, but some of the supporters that see conspiracies around their primary opponents on both sides of the aisle. It's very worrisome.
But that's the nature of the beast that is the internet. We're all more connected than ever before, and ideas don't have to die anymore. You can find someone else somewhere who thinks exactly like you do. And there's amazing good and amazing bad with that. It's a double-edged sword, like most things man has created.
And I think that one of the other interesting things about the role of the internet is that in the past, as we had things like pseudo-history and pseudo-science, and they were called that because even though they were really factually outlandish, it was easier in days past for them to masquerade as a genuine science or genuine history. Less so much now. It's in a lot of ways it's somewhat easier to distinguish between pseudoscience and what is actually science, especially in flat Earth, for example, or between what is actually history and what is not. Some exceptions being in places where scientific consensus may be there but is not as widely accepted in the public. For example, climate change. Conspiracy theories involving even the concept of climate change get very weird. But it's very interesting because the study that I had read talks about conspiracy theories and links them to things like social isolation. Oftentimes, they're linked to a lower socioeconomic status, that there might be a mental health condition. But then they also tend to reflect views in more esoteric spiritualities. They're not necessarily within mainstream religions. Holistic medicine is often, or neo-paganism, more, I suppose you could say, non-establishment religions. There are some common traits. Not that there's anything wrong if a person, holds to those beliefs. But people who tend to invoke crystal healing practices and believe that vaccinating your children leads to autism do share a lot more in common with, a person who might question how 9/11 happened than the rest of the thinking world.
A story about the last time I attended a Tea Party meeting here in Modesto. The last time I went to a meeting, I think, was beginning of 2014. I hadn't been there in over a year. Decided to attend it just to see, okay, what are these people trying to do now? Or what are they still doing? And when I was there, it was a room full of, at most, at the largest capacity, it was 12 people. And the meeting started with this old lady handing out a piece of paper talking about chemtrails.
Oh, I forgot chemtrails. How could we not have talked about chemtrails?
Yes, well, that's something that sort of infiltrated what's left of the Tea Party in some locations. They've become a real conspiracy farm. But that's.
Well, they in a lot of ways they were from the outset, because as early as 2008, many birthers found a platform within the Tea Party.
Yes, a number did, but then again, the Clinton campaign was responsible for the birther thing anyways. They started it.
Yes, but like any conspiracy theory, it gets out of control and never goes away somehow.
Yeah, well, there's still those people who don't recognize the presidency of Chester A. Arthur. Well, then, I guess if there's anything else, perhaps we'll, in another episode, do a history of non-American conspiracy theories to let you branch out in your knowledge of those particular theories.
Oh, those are the fun ones.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, well, those all involve international banking.
Yeah, the Rothschilds.
Yeah, so perhaps we'll do that in a future episode. But for now, thank you everybody for listening. And if you want to download this podcast, you can, of course, find it on casualhistorian.com. You can also find it on iTunes, and you can also find it on our YouTube channel for Casual Historian. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, business inquiries, then you can send those to casualhistorian@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.